What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 96 of the Bret podcast. So, we are now 4 episodes away from episode 100, and I am very excited for episode 100 to come. Like I said before, I decided to do a little bit of an AMA, so I'm going to ask you guys for questions, whatever it is you want to ask me. Be on the lookout on the socials for myself and for the podcast for when that will come about. So, this episode is going to be a special episode. I am going to be reviewing past Royal Rumbles since this is the Royal Rumble weekend. I decided to start with the first 15 Royal Rumbles. I'm not going to go through every single one. I'm going through the matches, or I'll go through whatever championship match or something like that for 1 year or maybe two for a year or something like that. There were some requests by people online, and there were some that I pulled that I figured was either the worst or maybe even considered the best. And like I said, I started from the original Royal Rumble of 1988 and I stopped all the way to 2003. So about 15 years that I will be going over. Something I forgot to mention in the last episode was the WWE Superstar Spectacle. The special that WWE put out on the network that celebrated wrestlers of Indian descent. And I thought it was a good match. My only issue is whenever WWE does things like this, because they did this with Saudi Arabia as well, is that they introduce these wrestlers and then we don't really see them anymore. The wrestler that was featured from Saudi Arabia, I think his name was Mansoor. He was seen on like maybe one or two NXTs after that, and then that was pretty much it. And I thought that the wrestlers that we saw were all new. Come to find out, there was one, I think it was I forgot which wrestler it was, but he was actually been with WWE since like 2015. And they kind of introduced him as if he was somebody new. So my issue is that when they, display these type of wrestlers, that they're not, introducing them as a part of the actual roster itself. But I know that they're starting at NXT India, and so I figured that these wrestlers are pretty much being shown to viewers as kind of a little bit of promotion of wrestlers who's going to be featured on NXT India. I am interested if NXT India will be featured in any way with the US, very similar to how NXT UK is being shown, and how there is crossovers between NXT UK and NXT in the US. So I'm interested to see what happens with that. So getting back to the Royal Rumble recaps, I'm going to be starting off with Royal Rumble 1988. This was the first ever Royal Rumble. This was not a actual pay-per-view. This was actually a USA Network special. As you have known, Pat Patterson is the one who came up with the idea of the Royal Rumble. And so this first Royal Rumble, it wasn't for any type of title. It was mainly I think they were calling it Battle Royale. It was basically a Battle Royale or something like that. It wasn't originally named a Royal Rumble. But the first Royal Rumble, it was not the main event. The number of wrestlers that were in the first ever Royal Rumble was actually 20 instead of 30. And the first ever entrant was actually Bret Hart. And he was a heel at this time. The second entrant was Tito Santana. We had Jesse the Body Ventura and Vince McMahon, who was on commentary. So the people who were in there, first Bret Hart, second Tito Santana, Butch Reed, Jim Neidhart, Jake Roberts, who came out to a very big pop, Harley Race, Jim Brunzell, Sam Houston, Danny Davis, Boris Zukov, Don Morocco, Nikolai Venkov, Jim Duggan, Ron Bass, B. Brian Blair, Hillbilly Jim, who Jim Duggan also came out with a very big pop too. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Dino Bravo, The Ultimate Warrior, One Man Gang, and Junkyard Dog. There was a funny spot with uh, Jake the Snake and Harley Race. Harley Race was in between the ropes, and Jake the Snake will punch him, and Harley Race will lean back while he's in between the ropes and then lean back up. Very similar to like a cartoon character, something like that. And Jake the Snake kept punching him, which I thought was pretty funny. With this, the most eliminations went to one man gang, which, bit of a trivia, they did the Royal Rumble before this one. They actually did it at a house show, and one man gang actually won that one. Um, so he was the one with the most eliminations. Bret Hart lasted the longest in this Royal Rumble at 25 minutes, but the winner was actually Jim Duggan, and then the runner up was One Man Gang. So Hacksaw Jim Duggan was very popular with this Royal Rumble, and he ended up winning. There wasn't that much anything special about the first Royal Rumble, just the fact that it was actually the first one. The next Royal Rumble I'm going to talk about is Royal Rumble 1992 match. This one was very unique because this was the actual first Royal Rumble that actually meant anything. This was for the WWF Championship. And this had such a funny story. Now, this one had Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. So if you ever want to watch a match where you hear how great these two are together, this is definitely one of the matches. So the reason why the WWE Championship was vacated, the title was vacated after it was stripped from Hulk Hogan after two controversial title switches between Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker, first at the 1991 Survivor Series and that later at another pay-per-view event. So Hogan and The Undertaker was both in this event, and the president, quote unquote, Jack Tunney, was giving them an advantage so that one entered at number 20, the other entered at number 30. But the biggest thing was Bobby Heenan was all for Ric Flair. And so he was pretty much looking out for Ric Flair to, make sure that he entered at a good time, that he was good and everything like that. And so the first entrant was the British Bulldog. Now this one this was more this the setup for the Royal Rumble is more than what we see today, where we saw a countdown. Only difference is there wasn't any entrances. There wasn't music to play to let us know who was coming out. Once the countdown happened, then you'll see the next person come out. So the first one was the British Bulldog, and then Ted DiBiase, and then number 3 was Ric Flair. So when Ric Flair comes out, Bobby the Brain Heenan has somewhat of a meltdown because Ric Flair came out at third. So the story behind this is that Ric Flair was chosen to win the Royal Rumble, and this is, in real life. And it was originally that he was supposed to be number 1, but they decided to make him number 3. And he came in early just so he can show off his skills. He was coming from WCW at the time, and they wanted him to show off what he can do. So he started in the Royal Rumble at number 3, just so to show how long he can last and to show off more of his skills. So number 4 was Jerry Saggs. Haku was number 5. Shawn Michaels, number 6. Tito Santana, the Barbarian, the Texas Tornado, Repo Man, that's actually a wrestler. He's pretty funny. Greg Valentine, Nikolai, Big Boss Man, Hercules, Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake Roberts at 16, Jim Duggan, IRS, Jimmy Snuka, The Undertaker, Randy Savage at 21, The Berserker, Virgil, Colonial Mustafa, Rick Martel, Hulk Hogan, Skinner, Sergeant Slaughter, Sid Justice, and at number 30, the Warlord. And so, little tidbits at this one. Ric Flair was doing his infamous ring flop in the ring. Texas Tornado had punched him in the corner, and you see Ric Flair does his infamous ring flop. The storyline about this was that Ric Flair had a lot of enemies. And so there was a lot of people who were coming after Ric Flair, including Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan as well. And there was a little bit of Hogan showing somewhat like a little ounce of being a heel, Sid Justice was not Sid Justice. Hulk Hogan was eliminated by Psycho Sid by mistake, and Hulk Hogan was standing ringside, and he was very surprised that he got eliminated. And so, it was just Ric Flair and Psycho Sid who was left, and Hulk Hogan was already eliminated at that point, and he grabbed onto Psycho Sid, well, Sid Justice, he wasn't Psycho Sid at this time, Sid's arm while Ric Flair came up from behind and eliminated him, and that's how Ric Flair won. The most eliminations for this match goes to Sid Justice. Ric Flair lasted the longest, of course. He lasted for an hour and 2 seconds. And he came second with the number of eliminations with 5. So when Ric Flair won, Heenan sat there and said yes, yes, at least 20 times when he won. Afterwards, Ric Flair gives the famous promo that I'm going to tell you with a tear in my eye. And that's when he also mentioned that he was the man. And he said, for all the Hulk Hogans and the Ric Flairs and the Undertakers, now you got to come after the man. And he woo. And that was that. So the next match we're going to talk about isn't a Royal Rumble match. It's actually the championship match, Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon from 1993. So Razor Ramon was actually a replacement. The Ultimate Warrior was actually supposed to be challenging for the title, but he had left that previous November. Um, Razor Ramon had formed an alliance with Ric Flair, who Bret Hart had defeated previously to win the title belt. And so this was a matchup between Razor Ramon and Bret Hart at the Royal Rumble for the what was the title called? The WWE Championship, WWE World Heavyweight Championship, WWF World Heavyweight Championship. This was before the E was replaced. This was the World Wrestling Federation. Funny story. I thought Razor Ramon was Hispanic. You couldn't have told me anything different. Uh, I didn't know that Razor Ramon was not Hispanic until probably NWO days. And that shocked the hell out of me. I believed that Razor Ramon was Hispanic, just like I thought Yokozuna was Japanese. And finding out that first of all, that Yokozuna was not only Japanese but Samoan, and then Razor Ramon was not Hispanic, that to me was finding out that Santa wasn't real. You know, kids are shocked that Santa wasn't real. That was the shock that I experienced when I found out the Yokozuna was not Japanese and Razor Ramon was not Hispanic. Because growing up, I thought you told me Yokozuna was Japanese. I thought Yokozuna was Japanese. Um, but with this match, this was a pretty good match. First of all, Bret Hart is a technician anyway, and Razor Ramon was just coming on to the scene. This match between them lasted for 17, almost 18 minutes. And it really put, I mean, Bret Hart was very popular anyway, but this put Razor Ramon on the map because he was known as the bad guy. This was this was actually the first Royal Rumble that I watched, and I had liked both guys. Wasn't really the biggest fan yet for Bret Hart, but I liked Razor Ramon. I thought he was had a pretty cool look. Bret Hart defeated Razor Ramon by submission, of course, with the sharpshooter. There was a spot during the match where there was a really cool reversal from the Razor's Edge into, Bret Hart tried to do a pin, but it wasn't successful. And then Bret Hart was able to put on the sharpshooter after that. So after that comes the Royal Rumble 1993. And like I had said before, this is the first Royal Rumble that I watched as a kid. And this Royal Rumble was pretty much all about Yokozuna. This was the build for Yokozuna to become champion. And so for this one, there still wasn't any entrance themes, but there was a countdown clock for the crowd to follow along with. The first person in was Ric Flair, and then was Bob Backlund. After that was Papa Shango. If you don't know who that is, that's technically the Godfather. Then came Ted DiBiase, Brian Knobs, Virgil, Jerry Lawler, Max Moon, Genji Chiro Tenru, who I didn't know who that was at the time, Mr. Perfect, Skinner, Coco Beware, which looking back, I didn't realize that I was actually watching Coco Beware wrestle. Samu, the Berserker, The Undertaker, Terry Taylor, Damien Demento, IRS, Tatanka, Jerry Sachs, Typhoon, who I was a fan of, Fatu, Earthquake. I was also a big fan of Earthquake. Typhoon and Earthquake as a tag team was known as the Natural Disasters, and I loved them. Carlos Colon, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, Yokozuna, Owen Hart, and this was, I think he was, I forgot who he was partnered up at the time. They recognized him as Bret Hart's brother, but he wasn't the Owen Hart that he would come to known as with the Hart Foundation. Repo Man, and at number 30 was Giant Gonzalez. The most eliminations for this match goes to Yokozuna, of course. Um, Yokozuna was very athletic for him to be as big as he was. And let me see, who was the one that lasted the longest? The one who lasted the longest was Bob Backlund, who was the second to last to be eliminated. It was down to Yokozuna and Randy Savage at that point. There was a big pop for Mr. Perfect, of course, and he was feuding with Flair and Macho Man. And there was a big pop for Undertaker as well. Now, Royal Rumble 1993 was actually the debut of Giant Gonzalez, who was brought to the ring with Harvey Whippleman. Kind of similar to how Kane came out. You just see this big ass guy. First of all, if you've never seen what Giant Gonzalez looks like, the bodysuit is horrible. It's basically a bodysuit of muscles, and then there was fur going down the legs and I think it was on the shoulders, and it looks like he was wearing um, a fur speedo almost, and it looked very bad. I guess they was trying to make him look similar to like Bigfoot or something like that. No one knew who he was, and they was like, "What is this big guy?" And it seemed like Giant Gonzalez didn't know what he needed to do either, because he kind of like stood in the middle of the ring, and he kept raising his arms, and he was looking around. He was raising his arms while the Undertaker was like taking steps to him. Um, the Giant Gonzalez then had, I think he eliminated the Undertaker by knocking him over the rope. Yes, he did. Um, and so then the Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez starting to attack each other afterwards. But Yokozuna became the winner, and then he would go on to WrestleMania 9 to face Bret Hart for the title. After that, the next Royal Rumble match I'm going to talk about is actually with Undertaker and Yokozuna. This is not WrestleMania, Royal Rumble 1994. This was the end of the Gray Glove Undertaker. This was a casket match for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. After Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez finished their feud, then it turned to Undertaker versus Yokozuna. The biggest thing was it was a casket match, and Yokozuna was afraid of caskets. The little one of the little things that scared him, because he was very dominant during this run so far, and so he was very scared of a casket. And the Undertaker, of course, playing the mind games, decided to do a double wide, double deep casket, and he did a lot of vignettes where he would build the casket. I believe at one point he brought out the casket as well. Um, and so Undertaker had the upper hand. This match lasted for about 14 minutes. And the Undertaker it was going back and forth, but the Undertaker was able to fight back. Um, Mr. Fuji then, um, no, not Mr. No, Undertaker was able to get Yokozuna into the casket. He went to close the casket, and then he was attacked. I think at that point was by Crush, who started attacking him. And then there were more wrestlers who came to fight on Yokozuna's behalf. I know Bam Bam Bigelow was one of them as well. And then the Undertaker was able to fight back because at this time, the Great Undertaker had the power from the urn, and so Paul Bearer would use the urn. He'll hold up the urn, and the Undertaker would sit up. And so Mr. Fuji stole the urn from Paul Bearer, and then Yokozuna opened the urn and then threw it to the corner. And the freakiest thing was it was smoke that came out. It was like this greenish, grayish smoke. And that bad boy, the smoke came out for at least a good 10 minutes. And so Jeff Jarrett came out, the head shrinkers, which was Samuel and Fatu, Diesel, Adam Bomb had came out as well. And they all started doing their finishers on The Undertaker. And Vince McMahon was on commentary at this point as well. And I actually was Vince McMahon and Ted DiBiase was on commentary, and Vince McMahon kept talking about how the power of the Undertaker is leaving because the urn was opened, and they kept attacking, and he wasn't getting up at all. And so they put him into the casket, and they locked the casket, and they were going down the aisle, and then the smoke started to come from the casket, and the Undertaker's theme, the gong, started to play. And then there was like thunder and stuff like that you could hear. And then the Undertaker appears on the screen, and it looks like it's like a camera inside the casket, kind of, because you see the full body of the Undertaker. And the gong hit again, and the Undertaker opened his eyes wide open, looked at the screen, and he said, if I remember correctly, um, do not fear, um, for all mankind will witness the rebirth of the Undertaker. I will not rest in peace. I don't know if that is correct, I don't know how I remember that word for word, just off the top of my head. You see the Undertaker put his head down, and then the it was like the screen started flashing, and then there was um, an explosion on the screen, but the casket didn't explode. And then it was it was the Undertaker standing on the screen, and the image of the Undertaker started to go up. And then as the image goes up to the top of the screen, you see the Undertaker come from up top of the screen, and he floats up to the sky. Now, of course, this was actually done because it was allowing the Undertaker, Mark Calloway, time to heal from a back injury. And during his absence, I've mentioned this before, there was a lot of kids who swore that they saw The Undertaker um, floating around. But this was a pretty good match to show just the power of The Undertaker and how powerful Yokozuna could be as well. The next match I'm going to talk about is from 1999. I had mentioned this matchup a few episodes ago, and this is The Rock versus Mick Foley, an I Quit match. And if you ever want to see a match that will make you cringe and make you wonder how someone is still alive and not like without brain damage, this is the match to watch. This was the I Quit match. There was a big feud between The Rock and Mick Foley. This was back when The Rock had his Elvis sideburns. He was talking a lot of crap and everything. And this was still like crazy ass man Mick Foley, even though he was Mankind. This was after the whole Hell in a Cell match, if I remember correctly, took place in 1996 or something like that, or maybe completely wrong. But this matchup came about, and this match lasted for 21 minutes, and this was for the WWF Championship. So this match started off in the ring. This was mainly about saying I quit. This was with the microphone and everything. Um, they went into the stands, and the first part was Mick Foley had fell from the stands onto an electrical circuit board, and you see sparks and everything like that, and then the lights go out. The Rock was talking a lot of trash during the match. There's a spot which you probably have seen, especially if you have saw the little PSAs about don't try this at home. The Rock went for a rock bottom on the Spanish announce table, but the table gave way, so he couldn't really do the rock bottom. Then they were able to get back into the ring, and at this point was Mick Foley. The Rock had put handcuffs on Mick Foley, and so Mick Foley had his hands behind his back, and The Rock then proceeded to hit Mick Foley on the head with a chair. Now, when I say he hit him on the head, normally you would see whenever someone takes a headshot, they'll put their hand up to you know, kind of slow down the impact that it would have on the head. Mick Foley had his hands behind his back, so he couldn't protect himself from the chair shot that was coming to the head. They asked Mick Foley if he quits. He told The Rock to go to hell. The Rock took the microphone and says, "I'm going to hell, but you'll be going first," and then gave him 2 chair shots. Asked him if he would like to quit. Mick Foley said, "You will have to kill me," and then The Rock hit him 3 more times with the chair. And these chair shots, they weren't soft at all. I mean, The Rock, it looked like he was hitting him with probably, if not all his might, then at least 85% of it. And so Mick Foley went outside the ring, and there was like 5 or 6 more chair shots. This, like I said, this was brutal as all fucking hell. What made it even worse was that you find out, I think it was a documentary called Beyond the Mat or something like that. Mick Foley's wife and kids were actually ringside during this match, so they were sitting there watching their dad getting his head bashed in by The Rock. So they got outside the ring. Like I said, there were 5, 6 more chair shots after that. You can clearly tell that after the last chair shot, Mick Foley just goes down. And The Rock, cuts not really a promo, but he says, "Mick Foley in front of the world, do you quit?" And then you hear Mick Foley say, "I quit, I quit, I quit." Come to find out, of course, it was a recording that was played because Mick Foley in storyline was actually knocked out. The story behind this, from what I've read, was that they actually agreed for only 5 chair shots. But by the time that they were doing the spot of Mick Foley going outside the ring, they already did 5 or 6. And so the story is up. There's a mystery behind this match, is if Mick Foley and The Rock agreed to kind of like wing it and add the more chair shots, or if The Rock went off on his own and decided to just throw in 6 more chair shots. I didn't really do too much research about it, so the answer to that may actually be out there. But from what I remember, it's a mystery as to if Mick Foley was, and The Rock kind of going with the flow, or if The Rock kind of took this away from himself. Also, with Royal Rumble 1999, we have the Royal Rumble match, which a lot of people say is one of the worst Royal Rumbles in history, because this was mainly a storyline between Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Interesting story is that the whole pay-per-view event is called Royal Rumble, and the tagline was "No Chance in Hell." And the theme of this Royal Rumble is actually the theme that would become for Vince McMahon. So Vince McMahon did, and of course Stone Cold was definitely beefing around this time. And Vince McMahon did not want Stone Cold Steve Austin to win the Royal Rumble at all, because this was for a shot at the title for WrestleMania 15. Vince McMahon put a bounty, $100,000, for whoever eliminates Stone Cold Steve Austin. The thing is, though, Stone Cold Steve Austin would start at number 1, with Vince McMahon starting at number 2. And I believe it came from Shawn Michaels, who was the commissioner at that time, who forced Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin to start out 1 and 2. So it was set up for, us to pretty much see Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon go at it throughout the whole Royal Rumble. That's what we thought it would be. First of all, Vince McMahon came out jacked as all hell and oiled up as all hell. He had no theme coming out. Because of course he didn't have his No Chance in Hell theme. So once the match starts, Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin start fighting each other, and they both went through the ropes, started fighting through the crowd and everything like that. The crowd's going crazy because, we're getting Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Everyone loves when Stone Cold Steve Austin is attacking Vince McMahon. So they go off through the crowd. They go up through the not really backstage, but they go through the crowd. They go towards the concession stands, and then they end up in the women's bathroom. And come to find out, it was the corporation it was a setup for Vince McMahon to lead Stone Cold Steve Austin to the women's bathroom where the corporation had attacked Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was then placed on a stretcher and he was taken away. And you actually see Earl Hebner and his twin brother, who actually is leading the stretcher. Vince McMahon eventually comes out and he goes ringside and he hops on the commentary table while he is still technically in the Royal Rumble. So the Royal Rumble is still going on. And here are the entrants. So after Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, it was Golga, Droz, Edge, Gilbert, and I think Droz was actually part of the Legion of Doom at this time, if I remember correctly. Because at this point, the Legion of Doom was doing the storyline that had to deal with, I think it was Hawk's, or maybe an animal. I forgot who it was, but one of them has a drinking problem, and WWE decided to take advantage of it and have a full-on storyline about alcoholism, and Draj was part of Legion of Doom because of that. Then we had Edge, Gilbert, Steve Blackman, Dan Severn, and yes, Dan Severn came from UFC. Tiger Ali Singh, the Blue Meanie, Mabel was actually eliminated because the Undertaker, at this point, he was the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker, and the Alkalites, who formerly is APA, and Midian, they came in and eliminated Mabel, and the Undertaker recruited Mabel to the Ministry of Darkness, and he would eventually become Viscera. Road Dogg, Gangrel, Kurgan, Al Snow, Goldust, The Godfather, Kane, Ken Shamrock, Billy Gunn, Tess, Big Boss Man, Triple H, Val Venus, X-Pac, Mark Henry. At this time, he was known as Sexual Chocolate. If you never experienced the whole Sexual Chocolate era of Mark Henry, you should definitely check that out. Jeff Jarrett, D'Lo Brown, Owen Hart, and then at number 30 was Chyna. And this was the first Royal Rumble that featured a woman, which was Chyna. She was only in there for about 35 seconds. She comes in, she eliminates Sexual Chocolate, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin eliminates her. Oh, did I mention, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin gets back into the match. He comes back in when Ken Shamrock comes out, and right around that time. He then comes out and starts eliminating people. Kane had eliminated himself because I forgot who was claiming he was needed to be institutionalized, but the white coats came out for Kane, and Kane eliminated himself. Stone Cold comes out, starts eliminating people, and then we're left with Stone Cold and Vince McMahon at the end. And Stone Cold decides to just beat the hell out of Vince McMahon again. No one could eliminate Stone Cold, of course, even though he had a bounty on him. And then Of course, The Rock comes out. He distracts Stone Cold Steve Austin. Vince McMahon eliminates Stone Cold, and now Vince McMahon is the winner of the Royal Rumble, and he was supposed to fight The Rock, who was the champion then at WrestleMania. Of course, what happens is the Vince McMahon decided not to fight The Rock, of course. Then Commissioner Shawn Michaels said, well, then you forfeit your title. You forfeit your title shot at WrestleMania. And according to the rules, the title shot is then given to the runner up, who is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he would go to, WrestleMania 15. And people felt as though it felt like it was a bit of a waste to go through all this just for Vince McMahon to win and just for Stone Cold Steve Austin to get his damn title shot anyway. But yeah, if you ever want to check out a Royal Rumble that was not a fan favorite, definitely check out Royal Rumble 1999. So the next match we're going to talk about is from 2000. This is the street fight of Cactus Jack versus Triple H. Now this was after the Mankind days. Cactus Jack was a lot more hardcore. If you know who Cactus Jack was before he came to WWE, you know that he does a lot of crazy things. But this also kind of put Triple H on the map as far as the hardcore matches. Triple H, of course, loves to wear a crimson mask, have blood all over his face. With this street fight, there was a barbed wire 2x4 that comes out. Mick Foley hits Triple H a couple of times with it. Of course, Triple H starts bleeding profusely. There are just a few highlights. There was a back body drop that was done on the announce table, and Mick Foley, he actually hit the monitors. Cactus Jack was also handcuffed in this match, very similar to the I Quit match with The Rock, but he had a little bit more offense. The Rock comes out randomly, and he hits Triple H with a chair shot. Now, while the crowd is popping because of The Rock and hitting Triple H with the chair, you see this random cop comes out and he uncuffs not Mankind, I keep saying Mankind, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack. And so you see now Cactus Jack is free now, and the match continues on. And there was the spot where Cactus Jack brings out a big bag full of thumbtacks. Of course, there was the back and forth of who's going to get onto the thumbtacks first. The biggest thing was Triple H goes and does the pedigree on Mankind onto the thumbtacks, and you see that Cactus Jack has thumbtacks all over his face. Not a pretty sight. His face was looking like a pincushion. Triple H would go on to win the match, and funny thing is Triple H ends up on a stretcher because of all that has happened during the match, where Cactus Jack was walking around like, oh, that was pleasant. He goes and grabs the stretcher, brings Triple H back out, and he hits him with the barbed wire 2x4. Basically showing that Cactus Jack will always be hardcore. So the next match I'm going to talk about is the Royal Rumble from 2001. Now, this was a favorite of a lot of people. This was the Royal Rumble that was asked about the most because this was the Royal Rumble that a lot of things was happening. This was the third time that Stone Cold Steve Austin won the Royal Rumble. This also had this Royal Rumble had a lot that has happened. So the people who were in the Royal Rumble, Jeff Hardy, Bull Buchanan, Matt Hardy, Farouk, Drew Carey, yes, Drew Carey, Kane, Raven, Al Snow, Perry Saturn, Steve Blackman, Grandmaster Sexay, the Honky Tonk Man who came back for an appearance, The Rock, The Good Father, right to censor. Love right to censor. Taz, Bradshaw, Albert, Hardcore Holly, K Quick, formerly who is now known as R-Truth, Val Venus, William Regal, Tess, Big Show, Crash Holly, The Undertaker, Scotty 2 Hotty, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Billy Gunn, Haku, and Rikishi. So the biggest thing with this Royal Rumble and what makes it so special, not only because Stone Cold won it, but Stone Cold actually was injured um, about a year or so ago. So everyone knows that he had the injury when Owen Hart had put him in the pile driver. So they created a storyline afterwards that he gets run down in a car. So around Survivor Series, Triple H was still champion. Austin was booked into a triple threat match for WWF Championship against Triple H and The Rock. However, at the event, Austin was run down by a car in the parking lot, and they did that so that he can undergo neck surgery due to his injury from SummerSlam 2 years prior. And he was away for 9 months with the car angle being used to write him off TV. And Stone Cold had returned with this Royal Rumble. Another funny part about the Royal Rumble as well, like I said, Drew Carey was part of the Royal Rumble, and he had entered the Royal Rumble at number 5. And at this point, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy had eliminated each other at that point, and they were fighting each other. So Drew Carey was in the ring by himself. And then out comes Kane, and people are like, pretty much like, oh shit. This was also the Royal Rumble where Kane eliminated 11 people. So this Royal Rumble showed the dominance of Kane at this point. Drew Carey was standing in the ring. I believe it was JR and Jerry Lawler who were on commentary. Jerry Lawler was sitting there cracking up, and JR was mentioning luckily Drew Carey was wearing black pants, stuff like that. And so Drew Carey offered Kane money, um, and then Kane went to go choke slam Drew Carey, and then Raven comes out. So Raven starts attacking Kane. Drew Carey kind of like stood there, and then he eliminated himself, and then walks away. Like, live to live another day. This also was showing. So Undertaker at this point wasn't, the phenom Undertaker. He was definitely in his, I guess, Big Red. Not Big Red. What am I talking about? Big Evil. His hair was cut and everything like that. This was when he was riding the motorcycle down with the Limp Bizkit. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. I really liked that song before the Undertaker. He had it as a theme. And the Undertaker entered at number 25. And at this point, The Undertaker and Kane were kind of like teamed up. And so they eliminated everyone. And so it was just Undertaker and Kane. And then out comes Scotty 2 Hotty, which God bless him. I always love these moments where the big monsters is standing in the ring and then someone with, gotta give them heart. We all remember when it was Enzo and Brock Lesnar, I think it was, when Enzo came out and he had Brock Lesnar standing there waiting for it. Of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin came out at number 27, which is the lucky number, as we all know. Let me see. Triple H wasn't in the Royal Rumble, but he comes out to attack Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah, he came out to attack Stone Cold Steve Austin. Him and Stone Cold fought each other, and Stone Cold started bleeding and everything. And let me see. And it was down to The Rock, Kane, and Stone Cold. And this was back whenever The Rock gets the Stone Cold Stunner. You sit there and do damn near like a push up after he rolls backwards. But in the end, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin wins this match. So the next Royal Rumble, I'm going to talk about is the very next year, 2002. So this Royal Rumble, we had Rikishi, Goldust, Big Boss Man, Bradshaw, Lance Storm, Al Snow, Billy Gunn, The Undertaker, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Maven, Scotty 2 Hotty, Christian, Diamond Dallas Page, Chuck, The Godfather, Albert, Perry Saturn, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Val Venus, Tess, Triple H, The Hurricane, Farouk, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Angle, Big Show, Kane, Rob Van Dam, and Booker T. So, of course, this is when WCW and WWE were 1-1. Terry Long, as we all know him as player, he actually was a referee at this time, and you'll see him ringside. This Rikishi had did the stank face to Boss Man, and also you heard me mention Billy Gunn and Chuck. So this was the period of time Billy Gunn and Chuck, they were tag team partners, and it was this whole storyline where you thought that they were lovers, but they were like really close tag team partners to the point that Chuck asked Billy Gunn if he would be his partner for life, and then they were having a wedding and everything. And then at the wedding, Billy Gunn was like, "I'm not gay." The biggest thing about that, there was a bit of a backlash because people in mainstream media thought that WWE was doing this to kind of promote, equality with homosexuality, which it really wasn't. So people were kind of upset that it was all for nothing. This was also back around the time where it was Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy, and Lita. Lita was with Matt Hardy, and I think this was this was before the whole Matt Hardy and Lita Edge type of situation. So The Undertaker pretty much eliminates everyone. Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, they're attacking The Undertaker. Lita comes in, gives The Undertaker a low blow when she interfered, and The Undertaker eliminated both Hardys. Maven comes out, and Maven is actually the winner of the first ever Tough Enough. And they gave him a contract. They really didn't do too much with him except for this whole Undertaker situation. And then the woman who won the first year, I think her name was Nydia, I think it was. They didn't really do too much with her either. But with Maven, he comes out. He's in the ring. The Undertaker goes for the attack, but the Hardys come in and starts attacking the Undertaker. The Undertaker threw out, I believe it was Jeff Hardy he threw out, and then he's standing near the ropes yelling at Jeff Hardy to stay out of the ring, and then Maven does a drop kick and eliminates the Undertaker. This gets a big ass pop from everyone because, this is the kid's first Royal Rumble. Now, I think it was his debut. I'm not 100% sure, but he goes and eliminates The Undertaker, which is a really big one. If you look back and watch this elimination, you see that Maven really drop kicks The Undertaker pretty hard. And when The Undertaker goes over the rope, his head gets caught on the bottom rope. And so The Undertaker stands there in shock. He has this look on his face that you'll definitely laugh about. And his mouth is wide open and he's like, "No, the hell this kid did." And he turns around. Maven is celebrating and stuff like that. He's jumping around. He gets on the second rope and puts his hands up. And the Undertaker has the same shock look on his face. He goes to the ring steps, goes up the steps. He goes up the ring steps and gets into the ring, and Maven goes like, "Whoa, hold on." And if there's ever one of them freeze frames where, you see the Undertaker's face and the picture freezes and it says, "This is the moment where Maven realizes he done fucked up." That's exactly what happened. So Maven, backs up into the corner. The Undertaker goes for a punch. Maven ducks. And then Undertaker goes for a second punch. And I don't think Maven understood that he's getting hit. And you see the Undertaker kind of grab the back of his head and starts punching at him. And then he eliminates him. The Undertaker then grabs a chair and hits the shit out of Maven to the point that the chair didn't. Poor guy. Undertaker starts beating him up, starts punching him. Of course, Maven gets slit right open. He threw Maven into the crowd. They go to the back into the concession area. I don't think security knew that this was happening because poor security tried their best to keep the fans back, but the fans was like literally like inches away from all this was going on. So the Undertaker's, beating down Maven as they're in the concession stand area. He throws him through a popcorn stand. Undertaker like eats a little bit of popcorn, but the fans are sitting there going crazy and everything like that. So I felt bad for the kid. Going down the list of entrants, The Godfather, he actually set a Royal Rumble record for the number of women that came out, actually. The Godfather comes out with 12 women. And he comes out with 4, then he runs back, gets another 4, and then comes back out and comes out with another 4. So he came out technically with 12 women. They dance around him and stuff like that. And then he starts to go to the ring and he comes back. He took up the full 2 minutes to get into the ring because he was sitting there checking with the women. This was also the Royal Rumble. If you ever seen the GIF where Stone Cold is his looking at his wrist tape like he's looking at a watch, this is the Royal Rumble that he was doing that with. Eventually, Triple H and Stone Cold are by themselves because Val Venus and Tess were eliminated by Stone Cold. And then out comes the Hurricane, which was pretty funny. He comes in and he tries to choke slam Triple H and Stone Cold like he was the Undertaker. And they both look at each other and then they eliminated him. And as you heard me go down the list, you heard me say the name Mr. Perfect. Yes, Mr. Perfect returned for this Royal Rumble, and all pun intended, he was perfect. With the towel throw and everything, he was really good in this matchup. Also had a bit of a back and forth between Mr. Perfect and Kurt Angle. So the final 4 was Mr. Perfect, Triple H, Kurt Angle, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And seeing Mr. Perfect and Kurt Angle, it was a sight to see. This Royal Rumble was won by Triple H. So, in most eliminations in this one, I realized I didn't really say for the others, was between The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the one who lasted the most in the ring was actually Stone Cold Steve Austin as well. So, the final match I'm going to review is a match that WWE will more likely never promote, which is from the Royal Rumble 2003, and this is Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit, or as WWE likes to put it, the man without a name. Now, despite how you feel about Chris Benoit, whether you believe the conspiracy theories or not, you cannot deny as far as the wrestling ability that Chris Benoit has. I wasn't the biggest Chris Benoit fan. I definitely respected his wrestling technique. I like technicians. But when just like with some wrestlers today, when he's in the ring, he is brilliant. But he was very I don't know, he was very straightforward and everything. I became more of his fan after Eddie Guerrero had passed away because I saw how close him and Eddie were. So I felt for him as a person, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like a lot of people liked him back then, especially when he had this match with Kurt Angle. Definitely put him on the map. Um, But I don't know, it's kind of weird because I liked his wrestling ability, but I just couldn't connect with him as not I guess a gimmick or character, whatever like that. So this was back when we had Team Angle, which was Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, and this was this was actually the time where people started to say "you suck" whenever Kurt Angle's theme music would come on. And so this match, like I said, it was very technical. It was a lot of good transitions and reversals. Uh, Chris Benoit had attempted to do his diving headbutt on Kurt Angle, but he avoided the move and then tried to do the angle slam on Benoit, which Benoit had countered as well. And then there was a great transition from the ankle lock into the crossface. And then there was a lot of there was like a part where there was a bunch of German suplex reversals, which was pretty crazy as well. And then there was another transition from the crossface into the ankle lock. This match lasted for about 19 minutes. And Chris Benoit then did a diving headbutt into a near fall. And then, like I said, Benoit tried to do the crossface, and it was countered into the ankle lock. And then Kurt Angle kept doing the ankle lock for like a very long time, and it forced Chris Benoit to tap, and Kurt Angle retained the title. Afterwards, Chris Benoit got a standing ovation for his performance, and I'm sure a lot of people became a big fan of his afterwards. Interesting enough, this is the same Royal Rumble that Brock Lesnar had won, and he became the youngest winner of the Royal Rumble. So that's it for the recaps. That was the first 15 years of the Royal Rumbles. And I'm sure that the WWE Network, I know that they had a special episode on the WWE Network where they went through the Royal Rumbles from 2010 to 2020. And let's see what happens with Royal Rumble 2021. If you want to know my predictions, you can check out episode 95 where I tell you what I think, who I think is going to appear, and who I think the winners would be for the Royal Rumbles as well. So that's it for the WrestleBread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to Julian Rob Bates from the Wrestling Court podcast on AlternativeMinds.com, Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show, Chris from We Talk Next podcast, Nando and Larry from Half K podcast, Devin Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling, and my boys over at Powerbomb Jitsu. So more likely I may come out with a special live episode on Tuesday, just recapping everything that has happened at the Royal Rumble. You can catch that on Mixlr live at 9 p.m. on Tuesday, and that's Eastern Standard Time as well. I'll also be returning with a regular episode of episode 98 on Thursday on Mixlr at 9 p.m. Eastern as well, recapping everything that happened on Raw, NXT, NXT, and AEW Dynamite, and a little bit of a preview of what's happening on SmackDown too. And now we're coming up with Revolution, and then I believe it's the Elimination Chamber that is supposed to be coming out in February as well. It looks like it's going to all happen on the same weekend. So that's going to be a lot to talk about, a lot to predict, and a lot to go over as well. Be on the lookout for episode 100, which is definitely coming soon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Jaydee Talks. That's JAYDE Talks, and follow the podcast at WrestleBread as well. You can also find the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcast as well. Leave me a review. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the Royal Rumble, and if there's any other recaps of pay-per-view events you'd like for me to do in the future. Thank you so much, and until next time, guys, peace.